Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to your favorite podcast, After Maghrib. It's amazing to have you here again. If you're here for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button because this podcast will change your life. Inshallah, we hope so and we pray. Every week we try to put out really beneficial content for you and also for us, of course. The journey that we're on and the lessons, the wisdom that we're gaining as well is second to none. And this today, inshallah, will be another episode, another example as to why this content is so important. So we ask you to keep subscribing, keep supporting, and comment below your thoughts on today's episode. We're going to be talking about purpose today and some of the goals we have in our life. What drives our purpose? How do we find who we are truly meant to be, if that's preordained or perhaps something that we have control over ourselves as well. And as you can probably tell, I'm not joined by Sayyid Ali Radhawi today because unfortunately he's not in town, but I have someone who's just as good as Sayyid Ali, and that is none other than my dear brother Muhammad Ali. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. How you doing?
What's going on?
You
Alhamdulillah.
Right? Alhamdulillah.
First time I've done a co-host with you.
Yeah. I think I've done one with Sayyid Ali. Obviously, I hope this one is just as good.
Yeah, and I think this is my first podcast without him. I know he's done a few without me. So, inshallah, we'll be able to fill his shoes properly, bro. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, all good. How's your weekend?
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, today's Thursday. Well, by the time you guys are listening, it's Thursday. So, yeah. But yeah, it was good. Alhamdulillah, bro. Alhamdulillah. So listen, guys, we wanted to bring on someone who we feel is the right person for this topic, and we believe we found the right person. This person's flown in for After Maghrib, or just perhaps by chance happens to be in town, and that's none other than my dear brother, our friend Sadiq Damani. Assalamu alaikum, bro. How's it going?
All good. How are you?
You okay? Alhamdulillah. Good. I believe you guys know each other from...
We go way back.
Back in the day.
We go way back.
What's the history there?
That's our ustad.
MashaAllah.
That's our teacher.
That's when a madrasa hasn't got any teachers and you've got an arrogant kid who wants to teach. That's all that happened then.
We all went through that. We were all students and then we kind of got promoted.
But then he had to deal with me just making stuff up on the spot.
How was he though? That's the question.
No comment. No, but honestly... it's weird, right? I remember when Sayyid Zafar Abbas he mentioned to me like, oh yeah, there's this guy Muhammad Ali, mashallah, his Arabic's strong and he's going into narration. I think you were translating stuff in Urdu and English or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, Muhammad Ali could be anyone in the world. There's a good few thousands. And he's like, no, but he's like guy from Istanbul, you know him. And then I saw the picture, I was like, what? And a part of me was like, maybe I taught him well. But no, it was good.
No, you definitely did. I think you were the first teacher in workshop to start like giving us the importance of Arabic, and you gave us these CDs and stuff that you told us to.
Did I actually?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, you did actually
get free into it.
Do you know what, bro? The impact that you leave, even I, alhamdulillah, I have ex-students of mine who listen to the podcast now, and they will still come up to me and tell me about lessons we had back in the day and certain discussions we had. And
crazy.
Alhamdulillah, now they listen to the podcast. But the impact that you leave on kids, on students at that age is crazy.
You just hope it's a good impact.
Yeah.
That's the worry,
Inshallah.
right? Because when you realise how much you didn't know back then, it's a worry. But
Alhamdulillah. I wish that, I was teaching myself at 21. And I think even now I'm nowhere near where I should be. But that was so many years ago. So it's crazy. So listen, for those who don't know, Sadiq is born and raised here in London. He, as Muhammad Ali said, he's like a teacher to us. I learned from Sadiq in uni. A few years ago, he left the UK and moved to Oman. I hope you don't mind me sharing. And he's been on a journey ever since. And alhamdulillah, he's come back to the UK to enlighten us and our communities as well. Before we kind of get into the discussion, I want to know for you how it's been there. And I'm going to do this by asking you to name 3 things you miss about London when you're in Oman, and 3 things you miss about Oman when you're in London.
Wow. Okay. Things that I miss when I'm in Oman about London. Family for sure. Access to Shia institutes. We have in Oman plenty, don't get me wrong, but I guess the depth of relationships I have with the ones in London is much greater at the moment. Inshallah, that will improve in Oman. So I think, I think that's a big one. That's in the last 2 weeks I've been back, and now I'm going back inshallah in a couple of days. I'm going to miss that for sure. Another thing I've missed about London. This is where I get exposed because it's a bit difficult for me.
What about the food?
No, we've got plenty in our.
You got everything there.
I wouldn't say everything, but when you can get mishkaki for like 40p, like what's the big deal, right?
Yeah.
I think things work here. Like logistically, things work. In Oman, I think in the East generally, something you would assume to just work like clockwork doesn't. And there'll be 1,000,001 different reasons. Like top of the list will be, sorry, the system isn't working today. Like, what does that even mean, right? Whereas here, like it's a lot more dependable. Rules are clear. Rules don't change overnight. Rules don't get regressed after 5 days. I think things just flow. So I think that is also nice when you're trying to get stuff sorted. And I think when I'm here, what I miss about Oman, wow, I miss the mountains. I think seeing the nature of Allah always is mega. Oman is bound by mountains and the sea. So you're constantly seeing both, and that's just special. I miss the slowness. I think having, as you said, born and raised here, right? London's quick, really quick. And everyone would tell you, right? You meet family in Peterborough and they're like, oh, London's too quick. Okay, Peterborough's just slow. I'm not to out the people in Peterborough, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And I think then obviously when you leave the UK, people are like, wow, it's much slower than the UK. The UK is very quick, but Oman, it's like, you have time. You have time to breathe. You have time to think. You have time to reflect. Whereas here, I feel you're just like stuck, constantly chasing one thing to the next thing, 40-minute drive, 30-minute drive, 40-minute drive. So I think time is another one. My cop-out would also be like the sun. I think, like honestly, waking up like with the sun is really special, and just always having a bright day. It's gloomy today, man.
So you definitely don't miss the weather here?
No, I woke up so miserable this morning. It's just because it was cloudy. Like
it's been quite hot here as well. So
Mabruk. Like when I call my parents, like, Sadi, it's 21. It's so hot. I'm like, Dad, it's 7 p.m. It's 43. Like we've doubled you, and it's 7 p.m. Like, so I think the sun though. I don't miss the heat, but I miss the sun.
Fair enough. So good to have you back. I miss you a lot, honestly.
Thank you for having me, man. I made it happen.
Habibi. So listen, I know this is a topic that means a lot to you.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to talk about? And do you want to tell us more about what we want to get into as well?
Yeah, sure. So I guess a bit of context, right? Alhamdulillah, we were brought up in Istanbul, all three of us, right? So we had access to a large community which had a variety of opinions from first day. And I think obviously we've had friends and acquaintances even in the community over the last 30 years or whatever that we've been alive for, that you tap out of, and you realize there are different groups, there are different interests. And then when you get to travel a bit within the UK, different cultures abroad, you start to see patterns. And I think in the recent time that I've had the opportunity to visit different communities, the patterns start to become quite consistent. And people say, oh, you're judging people. No, you just see patterns of groups. That's just the nature of it, right? Some people like sports, some people don't like sports. It's not judgment, that's just seeing patterns. And I think the more communities I've had to visit, the more I've seen like a real growing issue. And some ulama that I've spoken to have spoken to me about this as well, which is, for some reason, this generation, like us and younger, maybe even a bit older, has a gap in their life. And the issue is that gap is massive, because this gap, and I'll mention it in a second, is the core reason for why you should exist. And without it, you're lost. But you don't know you're lost. You only find out you're lost until a car crash happens, spiritually or physically. And then you have to wake up and go and find it. And that gap, everyone wants to fill it. Capitalists want to fill it. Consumerism, materialism wants to fill it. Religion wants to fill it. Politics wants to fill it. Different ideologies within politics wants to fill it. Everyone is after that gap, because if they grab it from you, in essence, it controls you. And not only have we not got people filling that gap, but they actually don't care about filling that gap anymore, which is even more concerning, actually. And that gap is purpose. And I think why it's so pertinent is that, and no matter which community I go to and wherever they are in the world, it's consistent, implying that the source of where people fill this purpose is from a consistent place, which back in the day wasn't the case because you were limited to your center. You're limited to your home, you're limited to your city. Naturally, access to information is through the roof thanks to technology, which has good and bad. One of the bad things is that access to the most dominant thing becomes the thing that fills people's purpose. So where you had to travel to get the American dream, you now get this dream, whatever it is, consumer dream, celebrity dream, influencer dream, I don't know what it is, but you get it constantly and you get it in your house. You don't even have to go and travel for it anymore.
Yeah.
And I've seen it's destroyed communities. Like destroyed communities and rotting communities. And I think if we solve this issue of what is your purpose, especially when you're in your 20s, when massive decisions are flying your way left, right, and center, who you're going to wake up to every morning, big decision. What kind of job are you going to get into, big decision. Where are you going to live when you leave your family home, for example, big decision. So on and so on and so on. If that purpose isn't in place properly prior to those decisions, you're going to have a massive U-turn. So you need to.
So you specifically mean individual purpose?
Individual purpose, which contributes to collective purpose, which collects, societal purpose and so on.
So I was speaking to you, Muhammad Ali, earlier, and the question which I mentioned to him on the phone is, are we not given purpose by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In the Holy Quran, he says, I've created man and jinn except but to worship me. And beyond that as well, does that mean that purpose is preordained by Allah? Is it set in stone, or is it something which is determined by us? Do life events shape purpose, or does our purpose shape our life events? These are questions that I have. And beyond that as well, just one more level or layer to add before I give it to you is, in terms of us being followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, following the Holy Quran, is our purpose as individuals and as a collective different to everyone else's?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I think when we look at like the creation of the human being, it's clear that Allah does have a purpose for us.
Yeah.
And it's clear that he's given us the free will to go and try and find and fulfill that purpose. Obviously, if we choose to do that or not is our own choice and our own kind of prerogative. In terms of us having the same purpose as creation, I would argue, from what I understand, that all of creation does have one purpose. It all goes towards Tawheed, all towards Allah. But what that means and what are the mechanisms to get to that are obviously what people will disagree about, regardless of which religion we're in, regardless of which sect you're in. Even within the sect, there will be different ideas about how we actually reach that Tawheed and how do we reach that God-centricism, right? And I think that is even reflected with regards to non-living beings. When Allah speaks about non-living beings in the Quran, he speaks about them making tasbih towards him, right? So all of the creations and everything is going towards that specific centric point, which is God. The question is how, right? And that's basically.
But I'm not even at all concerned with how. I'm concerned with people realizing this is the purpose. That's where I'm worried about.
Yeah.
I think the how is dare I say, the easier part, because there's Islam. Okay, but prior to that, it's people being stuck and like feeling stagnant and not knowing why they feel stagnant. And then, let's like make this a bit more like practical. Yeah, I'll go to different people and they'll say like, and they'll usually start with their problem. Okay, which is like, I'm praying and I'm just not feeling it. That's a standard one, right? And you're like, great, it's good that you're praying. That's still a positive. Or they'll be like, I go to Masjid Imam Hussein and I just, same thing every year. They always start with this kind of problem. Or it could be much more extreme and it will be like, I'm feeling super depressed. I'm feeling very anxious, feeling very nervous. I'm worried about how people perceive me and how they judge me and whatever. You're like, okay, what's actually beneath this? And once you crank it down, a lot of them will be like, okay, so to solve this, I'm trying to read like books to get me there. I'm like, okay, tell me what books are you reading? And suddenly I'm like, I'm filled with hope. Maybe we're going in a good direction. They're like, there's like this Rohit Sharma guy. And I'm like, you mean the monk? Okay, fine. Or like not so monk guy. I don't know what he is anymore. And they start listing you off all of these self-help books. I'm like, okay. So my hypothesis is that you've got a lack of purpose. Okay, because if your purpose is solid, you're not going to worry about a lot of these things, and a lot of those things will be in a much better place. So my hypothesis is that you've got a lack of purpose. Okay, you're telling me that you're reading books about how to help yourself written by individuals who don't believe in a creator, which is actually the whole purpose of your creation. That's never going to reconcile.
Yeah.
So you're going to have like this nice 10-week period where you followed this guy's mantra, reflect and whatever. Islamic concepts, no doubt, but without, as you said, God centricity at the core of it. It's just like nice exercises. You know, it's the standard argument. They'll be like, oh, you know, we do salah, but you know, it's good to also do these bodily movements. I'll just do yoga instead, and it's reflection, right? There's a difference between salah and yoga, and a big part of it is what's at the core of this thing, right? And I think that's my worry, that I see people stuck at this early stage. And I think, I don't know about you guys, I was stuck there, man. When I was younger, you know, you make every mistake under the sun, but you're going to mosque every week. You know, we're working the ELC every week, and we're hours at mosque is amazing, high count, but we're just a bit like, okay, what's this doing? And I think a big moment for people in their 20s, and that's what I really wanted to focus on, right? Because 20s is when you make those big decisions, and a big telling moment is, number one, do you even want to get married? Which in recent time, the interest in marriage has regressed massively. I remember being sat with a community, there was about 20 guys, and that's usually my icebreaker just to get them going. Like, how many want to get married? 0. First time ever. 0. Usually you'd expect a handful, right? Because some people have haya, a bit shy, whatever. 0. I was like, why? Like, this, I wasn't expecting this to be like, I wasn't ready for this part of the discussion, right? So you're thinking, what's happening here? What's the gap? Where's the lack of purpose? So that's if you don't want to get, you know, hopefully they do want to get married. If they do want to get married, a great moment to see if they've got a good purpose or not within them and within ourselves is, who do you want to marry?
Yeah.
Tell me the values of that person. And then they're like, you're like, no, write it down. No, I know it. Write it down. Like, genuinely get a pen. And anyone that asks me for help on this, I'm like, write it down and then write down who you are. And that journey scares people.
I think that's what you're saying there is like, it's a good litmus test, because even for those of us, and I speak for myself first and foremost, that may even have read a little bit about Tawheed, try and understand Tawheed on a theoretical level. The question is, in our day-to-day lives, like when I'm, for example, working my job while I'm doing this data analysis, or as I'm doing all of the things that I do in my day, is it actually that I've got God on my mind while I'm doing it? Or is it that it's only in that moment where it's now salah time that I'm like, okay, cool, I need to put work to the side and focus on God, rather than go from focusing on God to focusing on God, which is how it should be, right? So that kind of categorization of purpose in your day, I think that's a great litmus test. When you're thinking about marriage, are you thinking of marriage as something that is a practical thing that is separate from religion and my relationship with God? Or are you thinking of this as something as, this is part of my relationship with God?
As part of half of your religion.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. And I say it's an amazing litmus test. And I think when I see, you know, if you go for like typical person's journey, right, 18 to 21, uni or some kind of like education perhaps going on, or first steps into the working world, there's some degree of like, okay, how godly is your choice in your job? Maybe just like things that are haram get omitted, but that's not probably the biggest litmus test, right? But it's a big moment nonetheless. But what is a big moment is, you've just started your career. What do you do on Thursday nights when everyone goes out to the pub? What are you going to do in this moment? That's a decent litmus test, right? Then you start talking about marriage. We've just seen that, and the impact of the wrong decision there. So a decision that you make about marriage that is not filled with the correct purpose, it's going to stop you from finding your purpose. It's very rare that people are able to then, with their spouse, who also doesn't think that Tawheed and Qurbatan ilallah is at the core of what they need to do, for them to realize it later down the path, right? Yeah. What's probably going to happen is one of them realizes it, the other one doesn't, and there's a challenge. That's a tough U-turn. And you make that decision when you're in your late teens, early 20s, which is scary. Like, I guess by Islamic standards, you're well equipped to make this decision by this age. You're baligh. But by modern day standards, the 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old is baffled, doesn't know what's going on half the time. I'm like, that was us at some point. But how can we stop that from happening, right? Then you look at where you choose to live and which, do you attend majalis, do you not attend majalis, do you send, when you have a child, I'm gonna say it, what do you name your child? So we were just talking about it, right? What do you name your child? That's another litmus test. Where are you at? And the scary thing is, for example, when you name your child, you look at the rights of the child and even the rights of the father.
Yeah.
One of it is that you give your child a good name. We've turned names into a joke now. You know, let's be creative rather than godly. Lack of purpose, right?
Kind of scaling back a bit, because obviously I appreciate that we have listeners of different ages, of all ages. So we've got those who are approaching their 20s, those in the middle, in their 20s now, you know, in the thick of it, and then obviously those who have passed that stage as well. So people at different stages will feel aimlessness, purposelessness, that kind of directionless sludge in their life. You know, I don't know what I'm doing. I get up, I go to work, I come home, I eat my dinner, I go to bed. In the middle, I'll slot salah here and there when I have a chance, because obviously not everyone is at the same level of practice as each other. But the point being is that there's definitely a mental health element to this, and I think that there has to be a correlation between how we feel mentally and physically, and obviously our spiritual health at the same time as well. I know for men, at least, we definitely struggle with purpose. And I think society contributes to that, because we have a lot of pressure. This is obviously why the red pill movement is just booming, because of the fact that the expectations on men are so high. So high. So there's the expectation to provide, there's the expectation to be physically fit, to be a leader, to be masculine, whatever the Western standards or Western definition of masculinity means. The expectation to be a hard man and to talk tough and look tough and all of that stuff, drive a certain car and have a certain facade on social media. And then obviously on the flip side, we are perhaps raised as children of a generation of people who have had to learn things the hard way, many of which were immigrants themselves, and had to learn kind of by getting their hands dirty and getting stuck in. So all of that has contributed towards a big conflict inside, especially for men, in my opinion, where we're trying to identify where to go from here.
What's the next step?
At some point in our lives, and we may be so deep into it where we don't know what we're doing and we're just kind of hoping tomorrow goes okay. We may be in our late 20s like I am, or we may be way past that in our 30s or 40s or whatnot, and realize that that stage, like up until now, everything I've done has purely been by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nothing else, the mercy of God. I haven't had an active purpose in my day-to-day, and I haven't had something which is basically a guiding light for me in terms of the way I act. The question I have is specifically in terms of the purpose. Is that a purpose which is, like you mentioned earlier about writing down, is that something which is literally visible, written, concrete, something I'm looking at, I'm actively working towards? How do I get to a stage where I know that this is the right purpose to have? Can I refine it? Do I refine it as years go by? I know I keep going on, but if things happen in my life, so for example, you've moved country, does that refine your purpose? If someone in your life passes away, if you have kids who enter the picture, if you go through financial loss or financial gain, how does that affect your purpose?
I think something you just touched on, and I'll come to your point, was someone without purpose who has still had all of these achievements, inverted commas, is just through the barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they've not even acknowledged him. And that's unbelievable. When you think about it, like Allah's kept you going for the last 30 years. You've not even realized what this was all about, and he's still giving you more fuel in the tank just from his barakah. You haven't even done anything to get closer to him. It's incredible how merciful Allah is and how much of a chance he gives us. So I think this whole narrative that like he's ready to take you down is very, very, naive. But look, our opinion matters for nothing, right? What matters is what says in the Quran and the Hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Alhamdulillah, you mentioned وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. I haven't created jinn and man except that they may worship me, be in a constant state of ubudiyya. It's in like the present tense, and it's a verb, it's time, it's movement, right? Muhammad, you said the verse, I think Surah Al-Jumu'ah, right? يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Everything in this world, all of the creation is doing tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Quran is quite clear, like in terms of purpose, it's about this glorification and ubudiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To look at hadith, first narration of Al-Kafi. Should I put you on the spot?
It's about aql, right?
Go on. Of course.
I can't remember.
Come on, bro.
I can't remember.
This is your, we should cut it, come back, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember it.
JN on the fire. JN's on the fire.
I'm just pitching for that was all. Huh?
Creation of aql.
Yes, exactly.
And then, I can't remember the exact wording, but there's a few narrations in the chapter, isn't
and they do get repeated.
Yeah.
It's beautiful though, yeah. And I really like, I think this is where we need to be encouraging our brothers and sisters, like, get into the words of Al Muhammad. It's not just a side thing, it's an essential thing.
100%.
Right? First narration, Imam al-Baqir, and he discusses this exact thing. Let me take a step back, right? What separates man from anything else in the creation of Allah? What makes man greater than the mountain? It's aql. We all know that. That's the one thing that differentiates us from angels to anything else. It's aql. Fine. Aql is the USP. Clear. What is the purpose of aql? Now, you can either go to some random guy and ask for his opinion, get some opinion, or you go to the creator of the aql himself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fine. Go to one of his great divine leaders, Imam al-Baqir. He then tells us, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, Allah lets the aql speak, and then he tells the aql, go forward. What does the aql do? Goes forward. Tells the aql, come back. What does the aql do? Goes back. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically says, I've not created something more beloved to me than this. And I'm going to perfect it in those whom I love. Like, what is Rasulullah without his aql? Right? That is Rasulullah, right? That's everything captured there, right? And then he goes on to say this aql, and again I'm paraphrasing, I'm going to reward it when it obeys me, and I'm going to hold it to account when it disobeys me. The point is clear, the imagery is clear. Aql, go forward, goes forward. Aql, come back, goes back. What's the whole point of this? Your USP, your whole essence of creation, is to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is your USP. The moment man goes, you know what, I'm going to disobey Allah, you've lost. Your business is over, your USP is finished. Amazon doesn't have same day delivery anymore. It's done, right? You've got no stock. What's the point? Amazon goes from being something to nothing. Man goes to nothing and gets humbled by the mountain as soon as it disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's clear cut. So the purpose remains constant, regardless of context, regardless of decision, regardless of situation. Your prime element is to go, how do I keep my intellect, which is what differentiates me, to always obey Allah and always stay away from that which He prohibits. Simple. And actually, when you then go back and think, you know, okay, let's say after Maghrib, I'm going to pick on you guys for a bit, right? Let's say you guys were doing this podcast, qurbatan, to your own soul. Right? It's all about me. All about Ahmed, all about Ali, Ali was, all about Muhammad, right? And I know you guys aren't doing that, but there's a much greater purpose behind it, right? But I think we've all been there. We've all had projects that we thought were religious in kind, and we were doing it, and you're like, this is a bit aimless at some point, right? You got the hype, you got the followers, you got the invite, you got the this, and you're like, all right, that's basically it, right? Similar to career, right? You get the salary rise. Okay, you get the house, the bigger house, whatever. Even whatever you get engaged. And back in our day, it was Facebook likes, right? That was the game. You got rankings, you know, that was the ranking. You get engaged, you know, okay, say if all the likes have come, now what? And if you're devoid of that purpose, nothing. It literally just folds in days, right? Yeah, you then have those parts by Sheikh Abbas al-Khummi with his books, with Fatih al-Janan, if I'm not mistaken. It's like no one knows that it was him that was behind it. Like he wanted to keep it secret. It's just me and Allah. The amount of purpose in that kind of context is night and day, right? One sentence that you write that may inspire someone, that no one knows it was you, it could be way better than 1,000 majalis that you give, that you've plastered your name all over.
Can I ask you, if you don't mind, sorry to interrupt, but because you've referenced obviously a lot of amazing books, different scholars, verses of the Holy Quran, and we know there's a wealth of knowledge out there. But for someone out there who's reading self-help books or listening to podcasts, not like After Maghrib, but something which is, you know, secular maybe, or,
Sure.
you know, there's a lot of, like you said, these kind of new era, like woke, you know, liberal podcasts or whatever, where, you know, people are doing different things, dieting and yoga and all that stuff to try and find a higher purpose. You know, that's the thing, right? And I had that phase as well. I remember I was probably 18, and Russell Brand, I don't know if you remember at that time. Yeah, he was on that.
He was on a weird. It came out from nowhere.
Yeah, it came out from nowhere, and he was on a wave, and I loved it. I was all for it at the time. So I felt empowered by that, and then I realized after like 2-3 months, like, what am I listening to? Just like complete random vocabulary and just all sorts.
His vocab is good.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, I wish I paid a bit more attention to that, to be honest. But what I will say is that there are people who are saying, well, look, at least I'm trying, I'm following something. I listen to, for example, some might say, I listen to an audiobook to help me with my business. Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yeah. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. These are self-help books, obviously for business, granted. But is there not a benefit in that? And B, okay, fine, if I'm not listening to that, and if Sadiq tells me don't listen to that, is there an equivalent?
Oh, equivalent. Sure. Okay, nice. So let's go a little bit businessy for a second. So I like the fact that you brought that up, right? Simon Sinek is one of the big guys in that game, in the business game. I found this super ironic because during my like journey of trying to reestablish my purpose and it almost like not even intentionally doing it, just kind of through reading and whatever. And that's probably one of the points I'll mention later about what we need to do more of. Ayatollah Wahid's book on principles of faith was the game changer, like hands down.
Really?
If at all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows me to enter heaven, like Ayatollah Wahid is to credit, because that is the game changer. And it's anyone listening to this now, principles of faith, and just put Khurasani or Wahid, it'll come up on El Islam and it'll come up on his PDF on his site. Read it with friends. Don't read it with like a, forgive me for saying it, a lame, I'm reading religion and that's it mind. Read it with the lens that you're reading one of your university textbooks. Like, put your brain to it. Let's actually put the level of engagement we put to our academics to something more important than our academics, which is our life, right? The way he does this, each usul, intellectual proof, Quran proof, Hadith proof, next, and repeats the cycle. It's unbelievable. It's like 200 pages. Okay, but go through it page by page. Anyway, come back to Simon Sinek, right? So whilst I was like going through this, like figuring out, thinking, whatever, a few years later, I came across one of his books called The Infinite Game. And the idea is that when you build a business, you shouldn't have a short-term goal in mind. It shouldn't just be profit-driven. It needs to be something greater, which he described as value-driven, which he described as the infinite game. So you've got to find your business's infinite game. And sure, I'm sure he's just chosen that as a title for it to like catch. But just for a moment, let's just like intellectually look at it, right? Infinity, in essence, as soon as you have two infinite things, they're both limited, right? That's one of the arguments we have in Tawheed, right? To prove Tawheed. If you have two of them, there's nothing infinite. So when he's saying go and find your company's infinite game, he's actually contradicting his entire theory, because no two businesses can have an infinite goal. But there's actually a lot of value in his title, The Infinite Game. It implies singularity. If you don't read the book, it implies singularity. There can only be one infinite thing.
Yeah.
Make your business focused on Allah. That's the infinite game. It's not improving healthcare. That's great, but it's finite. All right? It's not about stopping war. It's great, but it's finite. The only infinite thing that can exist is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even in business, you create your business with the mindset of qurbatan ila Allah, and you've made it an infinite game. Now the way when, for example, when you get your first management position, and maybe again, listeners are in their like mid-20s, late 20s, right? And maybe in and around there, they will become a manager at some point. Your subordinates, there's not really a nicer word to call them, but that's what it is, right? I haven't found a nicer word. Your subordinate, the person that works for you that you're managing, is going to mess up at some point. They're going to trash an email to a client and cause massive issues. That's your moment to test your bottle. What is my purpose? How am I going to react in that moment? That's your moment to go, infinite game, let's go. You can
Yeah.
win a client if you lie to them. Okay, time to do it. You can snake someone to get the client. Time to go. Let's see how you do this, right? Your friends just turned up to be hired for a position and you've got someone way better qualified. Who are you going to go for? Infinite game time. This is infinite game, right? And I think we've kind of just gone, let me take all of these books and podcasts, which have valuable things. I'm not denying they have valuable things, but devoid of the infinite game, devoid of قربة إلى الله, devoid of يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض, is finite, is aimless, and it's going to crumble at some point.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that, right? So then we've got to go, okay, how can I find these self-help arenas that are safe and tawheedi? Sure, you can have a tawheedi course and then go read these things and come back to it. But I'm like, dude, it's not like Allah left you in the lurch without leaders that know how to perfect themselves and therefore yourselves, right? In Surah Al-Jumu'ah, the prophets told that of this concept of tazkiyah, right? This purification and betterment of the soul. We have a hadith telling us that if you don't do self-reflection at the end of each day, you're not even from among us. Do we know how much exists of self-help, genuine self-help? And let me now challenge it a little bit more. If you look at Risalat al-Huquq, first Risala of Imam Sajjad is the Huquq of Allah. Then it's the Huquq of the self. The one of Allah is that the first line is what about? You worship Allah. Is that He is to be worshipped, sorry. And the Huquq of the self is that you use your entire self to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no self. So the concept of self-help is not an Islamic principle because there's no self. You're completely absorbed into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there was a concept of the self, then I ask the question, in Ziyarat Ashura, why is the first line not Assalamu alaikum ya Imam Hussein? What's the title we give him in that first line? In the most honorific ziyarah of Imam Hussein, he's an abd of Allah. He has no identity. He's completely absorbed in Allah. There's no self in that. When you go towards them, what did they say? Labbaik ya da'i Allah. Call us unto Allah. They don't want an identity. They're nothing without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is where my gripe on self-help ends, by the way. I did tell you guys I'm going to probably go on a rant at some point, right?
No, go on.
Self-help as a concept is already anti-tawheedi in its name. It should be nearness to Allah. Identify yourself as Allah created me. That's where you humble and ground yourself completely. Because the intellect was told, obey, it obeyed. That's all you're doing. And I think when you have that at the crux, and you then got to rewrite what kind of person am I looking for marriage, and then what kind of person am I today, it's going to look very different to before you have this as the core of your purpose. Otherwise, you'll be like, yeah, Ahmed, find me a woman that's like nice and kind and, be good to my parents. This is all nonsense without Allah. Even the rights of the parent is dependent on the rights of Allah being fulfilled. It's a completely different view.
I really liked what you said and how you link this to intellect. Even when we look at some of the other hadith with regards to aql is always referred to as a nur, as a light that is gifted to the believer. Aql is defined in one of the narrations. It says, Al-aqlu ma yu'badu bih ar-Rahman. The intellect, by definition, is the medium through which you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the opposite of that is not worshipping or going away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another important thing, or I wanted to reiterate, something you mentioned is very, very important, that when we're thinking about religion, unfortunately in the Western world, we might go on to do amazing stuff in our academics. We might get to master's level, PhD level, become a professor, and still somehow think that now religion is out of my reach.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it to the scholars and so on and so forth.
That's very true.
To go and look into, but you're a professor. You're somebody that's gone into the depths of physics and rocket science.
Bro, you don't even have to be that. Like Sadiq said, you can be in a junior level management position.
Literally.
But we don't apply the skills that we use in our vocational world to God and religion.
100%.
Even the carrot and stick thing, like we don't apply that to ourselves.
And then on top of that, the way that intellect is thought of, even in the modern world and in terms of business, when we think about intellect, it's about, or even in a business context, people will think, how can I get to the next position?
Yeah.
Do I do that by snaking this guy? Do I do that by taking the dominant role in this position, or showing that guy down? And that all fundamentally goes against the definition of intellect that is given to us by the Ahlul Bayt.
100%.
And on top of that, we have narrations, like Sadiq said. I seen a book, I think it was by, if I'm not mistaken, it's by Ayatollah Shahri, and he wrote about economics and business and stuff, like from the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt. And there's another book I had about morals and conduct. Just narrations of, I think it was Imam Ali alayhi salam, and the whole book is just about morals and conduct. It's about, there's narrations about how to do business, how to be in a work environment, how to be like, how should your morals be in life. Like there's literally a whole guide. Like it's like, here it is, just take it from me. Like the Imam's literally telling you, I've told you it all, come and take it from me. And instead of reading that, you've gone to be like, you know what, my friend is listening to this podcast and he's a big businessman, so now if I listen to that, I'm going to be like my friend. Instead of, Imam Ali was the most successful worshipper of Allah.
Can I just add this? I know you want to mention something, but I'm also very curious to know, and I don't want to go on a tangent, what you feel about the LinkedIn world. Do you see what I mean? So the reason why I say this is, especially when you say, like, it just came to my mind when you said, like, my friend listens to this and he's successful, so maybe I should follow that metric. But do you know, there's like, I was on LinkedIn today because someone messaged me and I saw it. But I was like, it just drives me insane. The chat GPT nature of how humans have, like, just so repetitive. Line full stop, emoji, line full stop, selfie. Like, you know, and everything becomes, I bought a coffee today, here's what I learned about dealing with people over the counter. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's just too much. And that kind of thing it's becoming cheesy, and it's become, like you said, devoid of God. And we have a very unique position. I've always known you, of course, Sadiq, because we've been with each other since like uni days and whatnot.
Even earlier. We
were studying business and economics and stuff at the same time in the same place. And
not the same place.
Say that again.
Not at the same place.
Yeah, I mean, but we do you know what, bro?
I'm never gonna let you go.
We've basically been on a bit of a journey, like in the same generation.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated how you've been able to advance in your professional career, mashallah, but also be able to work on your family, your soul, your community at the same time.
Alhamdulillah.
So yeah.
I don't know what to say. You know, when it clicks. And I was actually speaking to a mutual friend of ours the other day at Jum'ah. Sorry, not Jum'ah, Imam Hassan Shahada, just the other day. And he said, this Farsha Azar, like this Majlis of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, no matter if you go this way, that way, this way, that way, this way, that way, up, down, up, even if you ascend like mad and wala billah regress, that majlis, if Allah has given you that barakah, will always be there. And we land back on it. I think, alhamdulillah, our parents, I know your mum especially, the mum Malam, that's the chief, right? I just remember her constantly trying to teach me Urdu. I was like, Auntie, it's not going to happen.
Did it have happened?
Absolutely not. But that wasn't on her fault. That was all me being some coconut guy. You know, we all know it's true. So, but I think our parents pushing us back there, no matter what bad we did, privately, publicly, grounds us. And I think what's really sad is that without having the actual understanding of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, those majalis can be nothing for us.
Yeah.
But we were lucky enough to be surrounded by good guys, you know, that we could look up to, who would be like, listen, Sadiq, I know what you're doing on the side. We need to get that sorted. But you know what, Sadiq, you know what, that post you just put up, let's take it down. It's not the right thing. We actually had like social police, not least your brother to me, my brother to you. I don't know, like we had like, the brothers would help each other. Yeah, and keep those red lines. Even us two, right? We had a conversation about it. Ali, Abbas, Habib in our class as well, right? You grow up and you look out for each other. What am I trying to get at here? I'm trying to say that it's all well and good attending these majalis and hoping it's going to help you. But if you're attending majalis of where what's being shared is not actually what Imam Hussein alayhi salam stood for,
100%.
you're stuck and you won't be able to balance your professional life, your personal life, your family life, your parents' life, so on and so on. You won't get the answer. You'll be like, but I'm listening to this lecturer, but nothing's happening. I'm like, was that his opinion? Or was that the opinion of Allah through the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? And are they enacting it? Because if they're not, you're going to get a limited sample of it as well. And alhamdulillah, I think we were blessed to have individuals who were in their talk and action completely aligned. And this was, I said at the beginning about London having access to these guys. These are relationships over like 20 years, right? Where they've looked out for you and you get to spend time with them and they get to guide you. I think that's the thing that changes us. One book in particular that followed by Principles of Faith, that was very theoretical. But I was like, and I didn't know this concept of self-help at the time, but I always had these questions like, okay, if the Imam alayhim salam are here to show us a perfect way of living as per the teachings of Rasulullah, let me see it. Where can I see it? Which then made me realize, okay, hadith is a thing. Okay, so now, side point, those who are trying to cut off or deprioritize the necessity of hadith from our community are taking away oxygen from our community as well, 100%. Right? And it's nonsensical. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala flips it in the Quran and says, if you obey the Prophet, you've obeyed me. How do you obey the Prophet? You need to see what he said. How do you see what he said or did? You need to go to narration. So if you cut off that lifeline with very basic understanding of ulum al-hadith, all I care about is chain of narrators, please. Ayat al-Wahid, to an extent in Ziyarat Ashura, says the veracity of this ziyarah is so strong from all of these accounts that I don't even need to refer to the chain of narrators. If that's a faqih, and one of the best faqih this world's ever seen, is saying, chain of narrators to one side, it's an illustration. There's many criteria in ulum al-hadith you need to consider, right? So which book did I end up grabbing? Credits to Hujjat Bookshop. Again, accessibility. Mizan al-Hikmah.
Great book.
Right? Classic. Collection of ahadith. Shaykh Shahri, I think, again, right? Imagine we mentioned his name twice. Amazing scholar. And it's just like, I remember going through it. It was like, how hadith on brushing your teeth. I'm like, wow, this is legit.
Yeah.
This is actually like on level, like hadith on finding friends. And I remember at that point, I was going through like a bit of a weird situation with the community. Like, am I college? Am I not college? Identity crisis and all that kind of stuff. It's like how to choose good friends, what friends to be mindful of, what constitutes a brother. And if you want, I'm not going to call it anymore self-help. So that's the last time I say it. If you want inaction, guidance on inaction to get closer towards Allah in all facets of your life, go to the narrations of Adam Muhammad. Because anything they say is living, breathing versions of the Quran. Nothing they say goes against the Quran, right? Nothing. It's immersion. And you have answers there. So those, and I think coming back to your point when you're saying like, what should people read or access instead of that word that I won't mention anymore, that phrase, go to the narrations of Adam Muhammad. And sure, some narrations are mega complicated, right? You don't need to go read the laws of Hajj from them all the time. They're a bit difficult. Go read How to Choose a Brother and sit with your brothers. I remember we actually had a session with one of our mutual friends, and I was like, look, I'm bringing Mizan. Let's just open it. Mizan al-Hikmah, let's just open it. And we went through it. Go through, for example, the chapter on what good brothers look like. Look each other in the eye.
Yeah.
Raise the conversations, man. 100%. Fine, speak about Watford beating MK Dons 5-0, which we just did. All right.
Congratulations.
I mean, I care when I see a good result, and then I leave.
Today?
Yesterday, I think. And I've got family in MK, so I'm just giving them grief, and they're like, we don't care anymore. Okay. Convenient. Like, okay, have your chill chats. I'm not saying that you need to suddenly become, 24/7 religion, but actually you should, because everything is religion. But spend those time and read with your brothers. And I think this is something that we've stopped doing. Reading as a culture is dead. Dead. Only business reading and the other thing reading. That's the only thing that exists anymore.
It's very true.
Right? And if you look at the narrations and even verses of Quran, when it comes to knowledge, right? The taste of the hadith is always proactive. It's never passive. For example, the narrations that say, go travel as far as some say China, whatever, go travel far to seek knowledge. My Shia will go through the depths of the toughest seas in order to go find knowledge, even they'll drown, whatever. That's not passive, right? So this passive consumption of information, of individuals' personal opinions about the religion is useless. Right? If that individual is not saying Quran, Hadith, and here's the analysis of a senior scholar, sack it. Like, frankly, sack it. And we need to raise the game, because coming back to this point on purpose, there is no way that this cancer in our community of purposelessness and all of its impacts could have come about if we had stuck to the real understandings of the ulama's inference from what Ahl al-Bayt and Quran was saying. No way. Because Ayatul Wahid's book's been around for how long? And I'm sure he's not the first person to write about Tawheed like this either, right? And I think this is an issue we've put on ourselves, and we're now facing the consequences of it.
I just hope that, sorry, I know you want to say something, but I just hope that regardless of however old you are, if you're listening to this, that it doesn't feel too high level, and that you hear, you know, books like Mizan al-Hikmah and Ayatul Wahid, and you're like, I've never heard of these people or these books, but they're still attainable. And even if they're not there are summaries online, there's YouTube videos, I'm sure people are talking about them, and there's always starting points as well. One thing I just want to add is, I know obviously these last couple of months we've been focusing a lot on our connection to Abu Abdullah alayhi salam and the sort of connection we have with him. And it reminds me of Arba'in a couple of years ago, where I had the pleasure to spend time with your cousin, Sheikh Sadiq Damani, who's a teacher to me and to all of us, alhamdulillah, and he's one of a kind. And I was his sole audience, I told you, right, for a couple of weeks. I got all of the gems of wisdom from him. And I remember I asked him in Najaf, in Karbala, I think it was Yawm al-Arba'in, I said to him, if there was one thing which I can take with me, because obviously there's the noise, the sound, the vibrancy of Arba'in. I said, if there's one thing I can take home with me, this was 2 years ago. I said, what would that lesson be? He said to me, remember that you are here with a purpose, and you're not coming here to seek help for yourself. This is what he told me. He said, so for example, people go to Arba'in or they go Majalis, they say, I want to improve my salah and stop listening to music and, stop lying and X, Y, and Z. He said, you are here with a purpose, and that purpose is towards God, and specifically towards the Imam of your time.
100%.
That Mahdawi purpose.
100%.
At this kind of juncture, I want to kind of bring that as part of the conversation. But yeah, anything you want to...
Yeah, I just wanted to take us back to the importance of going into the narrations and the importance of us going to them in a world with so many different ideologies trying to pull us in so many different directions. There's a hadith of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says that teach your children our hadith before the murji'ah get to them.
Yeah.
And at that time,
amazing narration.
The murji'ah ideologies that were trying to confuse like all of the Muslims, coming up with different questions, philosophical questions. Imam Sadiq is telling them, before they get to your children, make sure you teach them our hadith, because it will make them firm and grounded.
And that's probably relevant in all ages.
All ages, 100%. Imam Sadiq, again, he says, if I find a shab, a youth from my Shia that doesn't want to seek knowledge, I'll strike him on his head.
Yeah.
That's the level of importance that Imam has given to it. So, like, with regards to the narrations, those are literally our shining light. And that's what we say in Al Jami'ah. We say, Kalamukum Nur. Your words are light. Literally, it's giving me in the darkness I'm staying in, this is the light and this is the guidance I'm going to follow.
I guarantee, right? Anyone who's going through a rough situation, which we've all had, and I think you put a poll out, right? And then one of the things is, have you found like purposelessness and lack of direction? Yeah. We've all been through it, and I'm sure we'll all go through it at some point again in the future. And it happens, right? Just spend time with the words of Allah in the Quran, the words of Ahl al-Bayt in our Hadith. And when you just recalibrate, your mind changes. And I'm telling you, if you do this in the morning, before people wake up, right? You got to think, when you wake up, how much noise goes into your head. WhatsApps, Before you do that, and you finish your Salat al-Fajr, just spend time in the words of Allah and Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. And you just recalibrate that lens.
Beautiful advice.
You're not going to see the same problem as you would have otherwise. It won't panic you as much. Because when you rationalize it, you're like, okay, I lost 50k deal. Risk comes from Allah. Okay, safe. It can, logically, it's actually as simple as that. What's attached to it is the emotional faculties that are within us. But if you train your intellect and that lens, it's like an optician, right? You go to the optician, they train that lens until it's perfect till you get 20/20 back. We need to recalibrate these lenses to go, okay, when I lose 50k, I'm not going, how do I get it? How do I get it? What do I need to do back? I need to take from him. No, you're like, okay, lost 50k. Risk min Allah. Rizq is from Allah, sustenance is from Allah. He promises it. The hadith is telling me that if you go and do your bit, thumbs up. Don't be excessive either. Okay, so I'm not going to go burn myself out and mess up my family in the process because I have absolute conviction Allah is there. I'm going to approach this problem differently to how I otherwise would have done it, right? And this is where bringing it to your point on the Imam, and this is vital, right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we said about your purpose and your USP as per that first narration, Al-Kafi, is to obey, and you obey, then you see this beautiful line in the Quran. Ati Allah, ati al-Rasul, wa ulil amri minkum. Obey Allah, obey the Messenger, and those in authority from amongst you. So if your intellect, if the USP of it is to obey Allah, and Allah in the Quran commands you, obey me, obey the Prophet, and obey those in authority from amongst you, what is your job with the Imam, right? We don't need to go into all of the narrations that we have about if you go for Hajj, give khums, give zakat, do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you don't recognize the Imam of your time, or you don't have ma'rifah of your Imam, that none of this is helpful. It's all there, and we can bring that up at another point. But this obedience to your Imam, given that he is the Khalifa of Allah on earth, is direct obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Go and read what the Imam had to say. We have a number of different du'as that we have from him. See how he acts, see how he thinks. Go and look at, and again, to my dear brothers and sisters, Sayyid Munir al-Khabbaz has a phenomenal book called The Mahdi, Understanding the Awaited One. And Essential Ilm, the organization that we work with to try and bring these books to life and trying to get people back to thinking and reading and whatever. We've got discussions on this book by Sayyid Munir. And when you just read how the ulama understand al-Qa'im, it's unreal. Unreal. A lot of us, I think when we were growing up, we were thinking, oh yeah, it's just going to be like swords and spades and we're going to hit each other and then that's like the end of the Imam and time's done. Man, the civilization that the Imam is going to bring is outrageous. We have a 1 hour discussion. If anyone wants to get it, we can share it. And it's just incredible. And you'll see how Sayyid Munir, a scholar of that level, a student of Ayatul Wahid, a student of Ayatul Sistani, a student of Ayatul Tabrizi, one of the leading teachers of Bahth al-Kharij and Najaf and previously in Qom, like up there, how he, dare I say, dances between Quran, Hadith, and strict logic the whole way through. And you're like, wow. That's a scholar. If we had that on our pulpits week in, week out, or people doing, just saying what he was saying in his lectures week in, week out on pulpits, this community will look so different. And I've seen it with my own eyes. 60, 70-year-old men, after I read a narration from Ayatul Wahid's book on Principles of Faith on Imamah, there's a beautiful hadith from Imam Sadiq, basically almost like Ziyarah Jama. You feel like you're reading Ziyarah Jama. And this uncle came up to me afterwards, 70 years old, from a Pakistani community in East London. He's like, I've never heard anyone say this about the Imam. Like,
no way.
Where is this from? And this is one of those Pakistani uncles who like definitely is 24/7 at every majlis that he can get his hands on, just glued to it.
Is it that long narration that the Imam's like a shining sun and
mashallah.
What's the full thing? If you know about else?
It's about 8 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's a solid one.
Yeah.
And but you see that moment of knowledge that reaches him, and he's like, "Can I have the book?" Okay, fine. And that's just when you spend time with the ulama, not because they think they're something, but they've just worked super hard to take you towards Ahlul Bayt, who take you towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's as simple as that.
And the centricity of the obedience to the Imam is something that is spoken about in so many narrations.
Huge.
That it shows you the emphasis and the importance of it, that is the only way you're going to be able to obey Allah. If there's just to quote one, there's a narration in, I believe it's in Al-Kafi as well. The Imam says, ذُرْوَةُ الْأَمْرِ وَسَنَامُهُ وَمِفْتَاحُهُ وَبَابُ الْأَشْيَاءِ وَرِضَى الرَّحْمَنِ الطَّاعَةُ لِلْإِمَامِ بَعْدَ مَعْرِفَتِهِ.
Wow.
He says that the essence of the matter, it's key, it's like everything to do with the matter, the amr of the religion, and the pleasure of God, and the door to all things is obedience to the Imam after having recognized him.
Wow.
Literally, like everything you want is in the obedience to the Imam. Literally.
And I think
it
a lot of
summarizes
people,
literally summarizes
all in one.
I think a lot of people when they hear that, they'll be like, oh, this is ghulu, this is extreme, because it's the new term that they're hearing now, and it's like a nice new buzz. When you understand imama, and people then say that these individuals are lisanullah, are the tongues of Allah, it's kalamullah, these are the words of Allah, and then they're like, oh my God, no, I'm still shaking. Well, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the Quran about the Prophet, when the Prophet asks for pebbles to throw at Quraysh?
Yeah.
He's like, that's not that you who threw, I threw. Rama. Right? And then after that, you didn't kill. It was me. If you think these narrations are ghulu, tell me that the Quran is ghulu at the same breath. Right? It's your lack of understanding of imama that's causing you to get worried about this. Why do you have a lack of understanding of imama? Could be a few reasons. Maybe you're sat consuming information in lectures. You're not studying and seeking knowledge, and you're not going to the right individuals. And you can tell the right individuals. And I hate to press on this point, but until each of us wakes up and goes to the real ulama, we're going to be stuck. And this purposelessness is just going to continue. Because you see these guys, and we even mentioned it, right? Like you said, Imran, one person audience, right? You see ulama, they don't care about this concept. Audience, followers, WhatsApp status showing me do this, that, and the other. They don't care. Sheikh, you mentioned someone, I'm not going to say who because he wouldn't like it, but I was sat with him the other night. He was like, Sadiq, this community, mashallah, they were so nice to me, but they were saying, Sheikh, whatever. He said, I'm not a Sheikh. Okay, we'll give you this other title. No, I'm not. Hajj. No, I'm not Hajj. Okay, brother. He goes, why do you even need to put brother? They know that I'm a male. Just put my name. Even at that, when you've got a name like, for example, Sadiq or Ahmed or Muhammad, we can't even live up to this. Why am I going to add another title before it? Can you imagine?
Yeah.
But then we've got in other scenarios, no, I need to give myself the pomp. And all I want to say is just be careful. Because that is self-help. That's not God's centricity.
Sant. I know you are on a time limit, so I think we'll wrap up. The last question I just want to ask you is, if there's anyone at home who is feeling at the lowest of the low at the moment, anyone who's going through a real difficulty, and even if they don't realize it, so maybe just struggling, even if nothing evident has happened to them, but they just feel completely lost and purposeless at the moment, what would be one thing you would say to them to help them and make this night or this day when they're listening a life-changing day for them?
That's a big one. I'm gonna go a bit left field. I'm gonna assume, for example, like pray, istighfar, etc. is all there, okay? Someone gives something a bit fresher. Yeah. The thing that did it for me, and I still remember the moment very vividly in my head, was reading Principles of Faith by Ayatollah Wahid. Because the way he introduces the concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was like I've never, ever, ever seen before. Okay? If that's too heavy, and it could be, Ayatollah Nasir Makarim Shirazi has a book called 50 Lectures on the Principles of Faith for the Youth. And what's really jokes about it is that in the cover, he says that I've designed this for high school students. I've given lectures from this book, and you've got adults like, this is so like intense on the head. And you're like, it's just for high school students. But the way he introduces the concept of Allah, and if I can just give a taste of it.
Yeah, of course.
Summary of one of the first parts. It says every single person within themselves wants to be thankful. It'd be weird if someone was watching that I've come to your guys' studio and after we finish this podcast, I just walk out and I don't say thank you. They'd be like, Sadiq, that's rude. Why? Because every human has an innate level of saying thanks. It's just natural. You gave me some water. Thanks for giving me water. What's greater? The water that you've given me that I should say thanks to you, or the banquet that Allah has laid out? Why is it that man can go through life with parents, health, money, and I think a lot of people listening to this podcast will have many of these items that people in Gaza don't have, and we don't say thanks. And when we say thanks the way we want to say thanks. If I say, you're a Liverpool supporter, right? Yeah. If I say thanks to you, and here's a United shirt, you'd probably intensely slap me on the face and tell me to leave even more, right? It's finished. It's over, right?
Game over.
So we go, you know what? I want to thank in the way that I want to thank you. That doesn't make sense. You thank someone in the way that they want to be thanked. How does Allah want to be thanked? He doesn't want to be thanked. This is the mercy of it. It's not about Allah. He doesn't need to be thanked. He's just saying, I've created you to obey. And that obedience is going to help you. So I think when we keep in the top of our head that I need to be thankful to the one that gave me a banquet, because that's what's inside of me. How can I go through without being thankful? Then when that clocks, go read Munajat Shakirin. This is how you go between Quran, Ahlul Bayt, ulama, and just keep going.
Words of wisdom, huh?
100%. I really enjoyed this one, man.
Alhamdulillah.
Probably I've enjoyed this one the most, in fact.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah?
I'm not gonna lie.
But you know what?
You said you've only done one of these ones, no? So it's like two of these ones.
I've done a few after Maghrib once. I feel like this is my favorite one.
I feel like this is, alhamdulillah, for me, it's been something which I feel like I needed to hear on a personal level.
Yeah.
And I feel like in many ways we all need to hear different elements of it, if not the whole thing, and apply to our lives. But this age, the 20s, the young age, the transitional phase from becoming, from being a teenager and kind of learning the ropes of life, and then getting thrown into the deep end of employment and motherhood or fatherhood, and, you know, having to wear that hat of being an adult, grown up. It's very tasking. And I think it's important sometimes to reflect on how we're doing and also where we're going. And I think that's, inshallah, what people can take away from today. So, bro, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Enjoyed it.
I really hope you'll be back soon so we can have you on again.
Come over.
Inshallah, why not? That's the plan. I think half the community is going to move there anyway.
Do one on the beach. Halal beaches.
I'd love it there. It'd be amazing. It'd be nice beaches.
Let's do it. Honestly, they're beautiful.
Yeah?
After Maghrib and Ramadan.
I would love that.
Bring it.
Inshallah, 2025.
With Mishka.
All right, bro. Thank you so much.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, bro. Guys at home, we will see you next week. Thank you for tuning in. Let us know your comments. If you are the 1% or the 10% that are still here, then leave, what should we tell them to leave in the comments? Green heart? Something?
Yeah, green heart will do.
Yeah, green heart. Leave a green heart in the comments so we know that you made it this far. And we'll see you next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.